Well, welcome back to another episode of the Grow Your Clinic podcast. My name is Jack O'Brien. Thank you for joining us wherever you're listening or watching this from, whether you're on our YouTube channel, Grow Your Clinic on YouTube, or you're listening in Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and we realize that your time's important. Hey, we've got another clinic owner spotlight for you today, and I want to just put it out there right at the top. If you want to learn more, grab any of the links or any of the connections that we talk about here today, you can head over to clinicmastery.com/podcast. All of the resources will be over there, and you can find any of the other links to the Assess Your Clinic scorecard. You can get in touch if you need help to grow your clinic, whatever you need, clinicmastery.com/podcast. But with that said, I'm really excited to share another clinic owner story, to shine a light on clinic owners who are doing amazing things in different allied health professions, in different regions and different contexts. And today is a banger. Our guest is not a clinician by trade, which is a really unique story. And this guest is one of the most lovable characters you could come across. I'm really excited to have Chris McDonald, the director of Eat, Speak, Learn in Canberra, with us today. Chris McDonald, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Jack. What a privilege.
It is going to be a whole lot of fun. Now, look, Chris could talk underwater with a mouthful of marbles, so make sure you've got 2.5 hours set aside for this podcast. I'm only joking. But Chris, we're going to have lots of fun. I got a couple of quick icebreaker questions for you off the top. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Number one, what are you reading right now?
I'm reading The Coaching Habit at the moment. Myself and the leadership team, we're all onto it.
Yeah, nice. And who's the author of that one?
That's Michael Bungay-Stania.
That's the one. Absolute ripper book, that. Definitely recommend it for leaders. The Coaching Habit, how you can get the best out of your team. Good stuff. Number two, who inspires you?
Well, from a clinic owner perspective, I work with an awesome team through Clinic Mastery. Lauren Haskins, Marion Giddy, just so many. There's about 5 of us in the group. We do so much good work. But yeah, I'm going to do a big shout out for Lauren. We're on completely opposite sides of every spectrum. So she just makes me think in all these incredible ways that aren't my natural. And personally, I've got a background in history and politics and whatnot. So I'm obsessed with people who have complex histories and people that are in positions that the end game isn't always guaranteed. So people like the founding fathers of the US, Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, like just these fascinating stories that, people going through tough times and building these sustainable nations and whatnot. So fascinating.
Ah, interesting. I didn't know you were a history buff. That's good to know. Number three, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to be a flight attendant. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a test cricketer. I'm still working out what I want to be.
Okay. Well, I'll have to dig a bit deeper on a few of those. And finally, mate, what's a motto that you like to live by?
I love manage expectations. A mentor of mine put me onto it years ago, and it's just key. If you manage expectations, whether it's with your clients, your team, your family, life gets easier.
I like it. That's awesome. Okay, so why don't you give us the headline, the elevator pitch of Eat, Speak, Learn. Tell us about your clinic.
Okay, we're a speech pathology clinic located in Canberra in the ACT. We've got 13 speech pathologists work with us. We've just introduced exercise physiology. We want to break out into some more spaces. So we've now got an OT and a dietitian working from some other practices helping us out with groups. But really, we just want to do amazing services in the ACT. And we've got a great reputation for doing that.
I like it. So not just speech, we're crossing over into the multidisciplinary world, hey?
Yeah, pediatrics too, Jack. So lots of fun with the kids. Yeah, it's great.
So good, so good. So, I snuck it in at the top, Chris, for listeners. You're not a clinician by background, so can you maybe connect the dots for us? What's been the timeline of Chris McDonald from sending down fast bowling in the backyard, wannabe test cricketer, architect, teacher? I know you've travelled lots. Run us through a bit of your career arc and how you ended up being a clinic owner.
Yeah, so it's a big arc. I'm currently the father of three and married to a speech pathologist, so I'll give away a bit of the end
Mm-hmm.
there. But it sort of goes right back to my high school days and my first job. So I'm the son of immigrants. My father's Scottish, my mother's Irish, and growing up, all our family lived overseas. So a big driver for me was to go back and visit family. And I was lucky enough to get a couple of trips out of the parents in my early days. And they said, look, Chris, if you save up half the money for a trip back to see the family, we'll pay the other half.
Okay.
So I got my first job at 14 in a butcher's, and I saved up my money. And at 15, I was ready to go. I'd saved up half the fare, and
Yep.
and off I went. I took the last term off year 10, and I went off to the other side of the world to visit my family. And
Wow.
then I did it again when I finished high school, and I went into studying to be a teacher. But the thing was that I just wasn't passionate about that role of being a teacher, and very quickly in that uni career that became apparent. So I love finishing things and doing what I do well. So
Uh-huh.
I finished the qualifications and whatnot, and then I went traveling again. So I'd had a few years overseas at this point, and travel's been my passion. And it was at the end of that adventure, coming back at about 22 years old, 23 years old, that I met my wife almost the day after I got back. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I was working at Liquorland, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd lined up those jobs while I was overseas and walked straight into it. And there she was, stunning, stunning that day and stunning now. And that sort of started an almost 20-year journey for me. I spent the next few years traveling again. I'd work, I'd work casual in the liquor industry, and I'd work 70, 80 hours a week, and I would save my money up, and I'd work for 7 months of the year, and then I'd go traveling for 5 months, and I'd go and
Wow.
watch the Test cricket played all over the world. I'd just read a book. I read The Beach one day, and the next week I'm in Thailand, living the dream. So that was kind of my life on and off for a few years, and then I thought, look, I need to get serious and grow up a bit. I'm starting to get towards my late 20s, and what do I want to do? So I enrolled for a Bachelor of Teaching again, a diploma of teaching. I thought, geez, I need to get serious. And while I was there, I found a master's in international relations. So I signed up to both, studying one in Sydney and one in Newcastle, and living on the Central Coast. And and from there, I went straight into the masters. I dropped the teaching for the second time in my career, and finished the masters, and decided to move down to Canberra and search for a job in foreign affairs. So that was how I landed in Canberra,
Mm-hmm.
and then found that work was a bit more difficult to get than I thought. So I ended up in a 10-year career at Parliament House,
Uh-huh.
doing all sorts of jobs. Managing the Senate chamber, the accommodations manager for the Senate. I did contract management work for the Department of Parliamentary Services. Uh, so many varied roles. I got to be part of presidential visits and all sorts of things.
Mm.
The privileges of being able to sit in the Senate chamber while Obama did his speech. Just
Wow.
amazing, amazing things. Getting to meet the Dalai Lama and Hulk Hogan. Cool experiences.
Yeah.
And I love that passion of being able to serve.
Uh-huh. And so while you're, gallivanting around the world and hanging out with politicians, Lauren, your other half, has she started a clinic at this stage?
No, so the moment I moved to Canberra, I flagged with Lauren that was going to happen, and asked her if she'd like to move with me. She was commencing her master's of speech pathology at that point, and she said, "No, I don't really want to move to Canberra." And it's funny, we joke later, because Canberra's the best place in the world you could possibly live. It just doesn't have that reputation if you've
Sure.
never done it. So Lauren was doing that, and she got some roles in community health and working for the ACT government. And uh, her adventure as a speech pathologist got a little bit railroaded by the NDIS. So when that came in 2013, 2014, the ACT was the first whole of government trial site.
Right.
And that meant that all those allied health professionals working for the government, and there was a lot of them, they all got put out of work effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And so Lauren had to find a role that worked for her. And she interviewed in private practice, she interviewed with some NGOs, she considered other government roles that weren't therapist related, but there was nothing there ticking her boxes. And we were going for a walk around the beautiful Lake Ginninderra in Belconnen, just near where our clinic's located. And she said to me one day, I just want to deliver these amazing services for clients, but be part of a collaborative team and feel like I'm working with people with a higher vision. And I said to her, well, why can't we do that? And the idea of running a business just terrified her, but it excited me.
Right, because she's spent most of her time in working in the public health system, and you're a public servant, right? Like it's private practice. It doesn't really seem compatible with public service life.
No, so it was a completely different plan. So the good thing about the government pulling out of those services was they had a long waiving of any conflict of interest. So
Right.
she was allowed to run her own private practice while having the safety of being a public servant. So this unique little window that opened up of a safety net. So we started our clinic from the spare bedroom on a
Mm-hmm.
Saturday morning, seeing 3 or 4 clients a week. And
Wow.
we weren't even sure if there was a need for it.
Right.
And
Just have a
we've
go
now got a
and
wait.
see what happens.
Yep, we've now
So
got a wait list of 400. So it's come a long way.
it's come a long way. And so you at this stage, early days, bootstrapping in the spare room, you're still working your day job and then moonlighting as a wannabe practice manager.
That's right.
Tell
So
us tell us about that journey into now full-time director, manager, etc.
yeah, so setting up the systems and the practice management software, the invoicing, all those kind of things, that was enjoyable doing it an hour here and an hour there. But as we grew and started to bring on some team members and have more children and whatnot, as that went along, that 1 or 2 hours here and there started to become a second full-time job.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I was in an amazing position in my role where I was leading a project that had a definitive finish date. And as part of that, I did my desire statement uh,
Mhm.
when I was working at Parliament House. And I had this light bulb moment that said, where do you want to be in 3 years' time? And it wasn't working as a public servant anymore. It was working for Eat, Speak, Learn.
Mm.
So I was able to line that up with the project finishing and come across into the business full time. Uh, that was pretty scary at that time. We were a clinic of 4 practitioners and 1 admin staff member
Hmm.
outside of myself. And over that next year, we built that up to being 10 practitioners uh, and a team of 3 admin. So,
Wow.
just by having that 100% investment in the business for my time, that was amazing. And we had 2 young boys at the time. So I
Hmm.
was able to have the time with them on their days off when they weren't at preschool or childcare. So we started to get that work-life balance around the family and support Lauren in her role as a practitioner, doing what she wanted to do and building that team. So from there, we've built up to having a team of 21 at the
Wow.
moment. We're always looking to grow and we want to do amazing things. As I
Hmm.
mentioned, we've got a long wait list. So being able to help those families is something I'm so passionate about.
Mm.
But for the last 4 years, while I've worked in this role full time in a clinic, I just don't feel like I've ever gone to work.
It's not a job.
It's not a job; it's a passion.
Uh-huh. And it's interesting because you don't have a clinical background yourself, and yet you're immersed in clinical world for most of your waking hours. I'm curious, how do you balance that tension of like, is there ever an imposter syndrome that says I shouldn't be doing this, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not clinical? How do you manage that tension of being non-clinical?
There absolutely was. Imposter syndrome's a good way of putting it. Over those first few years, um, I think for any clinic owner, when you start out, you don't know what you're doing. It doesn't matter where you're getting help; it's hard.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I, I, I think some of those conversations with practitioners early on, when you don't have good systems in place, you don't have clear direction around what that expectation you're trying to manage is, then those situations are really difficult when you're not coming from a clinical background.
Sure.
Because anything can be shut down with the "you're not a practitioner, what would you know" end game. And I think probably my first 5 years in our business was a lot of that. And we've just hit the 7-year mark for context.
Mm.
The last 2 years, I feel I've really been able to amplify what my impact is by understanding that there's a lot of drivers around our clinic that aren't therapy related.
Right.
And clinic mastery has been a big part of that journey for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
So good systems, for example, good systems will manage good outcomes. When we first started, we let every practitioner deliver therapy the way they thought was best. We thought that was best practice. And then we realized if a client's transitioning from one practitioner to the next, the service delivery could be 180-degree difference.
Right.
So being able to get good systems in place was critical.
Yeah, sure. So, I think we've breezed over a little bit, but you mentioned, it's been less than 10 years. You're now at a team of, say, 21 or 23. That's quite rapid. Talk to me about the human side of things. How have you gone about recruiting in a profession that's traditionally really hard to find, and not just speech, but, OT and psych and EP and dietetics. It's typically hard to recruit. So how have you, A, gone about growing such a large team, and B, how have you been able to maintain your soul in the process alongside your core values? So how have you grown and how have you maintained your soul?
At the start, around recruitment, it was those personal relationships that Lauren had with others in the industry that was key to our recruitment pathways. But those don't last forever. So I think there was a few different evolutions of where our recruitment's come from. The second point was the second stage was around hustling. So knowing that we needed to bring more practitioners on to achieve what we wanted, actively going and searching for them and building those relationships and bringing people on board, that's when and then looking for those new grads, that was that period as well, where we first did that. But through those periods as well, we also had people leave us. And that was probably the biggest lesson we learned. Hustling to get people's one thing, understanding if they don't stay, why was the next. And that's really where the values started to kick in. And our growth from there has been built all around being true to our values, having the team build the values with us together, living them every day, infusing them in what we do, and infusing them with clients, not just with our team.
So when you say, Chris, that a couple of people had left along the way, how did that enable you to crystallize things like your values?
Well, I think when people leave, you ask yourself a lot of questions. And if you get the opportunity, you ask them a lot of questions too. And often in these industries, we're all trying our hardest to do the best, but sometimes it's not aligning.
Sure.
And being clear around what we're trying to achieve together, what we're trying to align, has been such a key part of what we do now. So from the start, through that recruitment process, making sure that we're recruiting the right people that align with the right vision.
So can I interrupt? That sounds lovely, but in practice, sometimes, especially in speech land, right? You just need someone who has a degree, 2 feet and a heartbeat to service the wait list. So how do you make sure someone's aligned when you just desperately need someone?
Well, years ago, I would have just taken someone.
Right.
And now I won't.
Right. Say more.
Well, when you have people that aren't aligned in your business, it can become toxic. That you're more likely to lose a load of practitioners by having the wrong person in there than you are to recruit more. So that's where that values conversation and your team and your culture, they all fit together so closely. And sometimes we're just so desperate to get anybody in that we can make terrible mistakes. And look, I won't say we've made mistakes over the years, but we may have not investigated that hard enough, and we might have had these amazing characters as part of our team, but we might have been trying to achieve different things.
Sure.
And and that's where, asking those right questions at recruitment, really having those right systems up when you're onboarding team, managing those probation periods well, the goal setting, all of those things really show you whether that alignment's coming or whether you need to call it a day early. And that's
So,
really hard.
oh, it's incredibly hard. So, we've talked about kind of keeping our recruitment aligned with our values. Now, though, you're leading quite a significant team. We were talking off air before we hit record around what your day looked like today. How do you go about nurturing your team? I'd imagine your role is nearly full-time people management now. How do you go about leading the team like that?
Yeah, there's certainly an element of that. I have an incredible team. I'll say that from the start. We value culture above everything else. So we have our team culture days each quarter, and they're always a load of fun, whether it's going out to a llama farm or doing a MasterChef session. That's the reward at the end. Then coming back from there, we have our goal setting. So we've spent the last fortnight doing really strong goal setting, lining ourselves up for the next quarter so people can achieve what they want. And everybody in my clinic has a different version of success.
Mm-hmm.
For some, it's all about a high income. For others, it's around flexibility around family or taking time off. For others, it might be around professional development.
Mm-hmm.
So really understanding what somebody's going towards and working on that with each individual is critical. Then coming back from that, there's the daily stuff that we do every day. So, we get together and have a morning huddle and we celebrate our wins and ask what we need help with and, things like that. At lunch, we have a practitioner meeting for just 15 minutes so people can share what they've learned.
Mm-hmm.
And those personal interactions every day are so important. I've spent my day today. I had 9 practitioners, half an hour with each of them, and we just zeroed in on what's important to them. But sitting above all of that is probably our core purpose.
Right.
And we have a shared core purpose as a team of achieving 2,000 meaningful outcomes by December 2022. And that's a goal we set last September that we felt was achievable. And that one core purpose ties into everything we do. So it's based on, what have we set out to achieve with the client? And when are we checking in? Did we get there or not? And if a client's achieved that goal, we put a leaf on a beautiful tree out in the weight room and they get to write on what it was they achieved. And, it might just be sitting at the dinner table for 10 minutes or taking 3 turns in a game, really simple things that can be understood. And with those 2,000 leaves, the plan at the end of next year is to turn them into real trees.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, so that hard work becomes really sustainable. And from a values perspective, then it makes things easier. So, be the best you is one of our values. So the therapist bringing their best, the clients bringing their best around what they're working on, and their parents, making it happen and achieving results is our second, and keep it fun is our third value. So, in a pediatric clinic, there's a lot of fun. I caught the two. There was a bunch of them throwing water bombs off the balcony with their clients the other day, and everybody having a ball. And finally, stronger together is our last one, and keeping that team culture and working stronger together is just so important. So we have an above the line channel in our Slack, for example, where we call each other out or call ourselves out for making mistakes. So it might have been that, I didn't clean the clinic room today, and I'm really sorry that that's impacted the next person. I'll be in there in the morning and I'll get that sorted. Or I've forgotten my mask during a COVID outbreak. Can somebody get me a mask quickly? Whatever those things might be, the team is so honest and raw with each other. And it means we don't have the bit sitting around the background, the gossip and the self-sabotage or any of those things that are part of a team.
So that's taken years to build. I'm sure. I'm interested. What do you do differently now as a leader that you didn't used to do?
I'm constantly learning, Jack, and constantly trying to be better. I think when I first got into this, I understood numbers.
Right.
I'm one of those rare clinic owners. Numbers made sense. What I wasn't great at was some of those values things. Um, the listening I've gotten better at, and I've still got a long way to go. Um, I think a lot of the things I've done differently has really been about learning and investing in my journey, um, so that I'm not going around in circles, constantly changing things without getting somewhere bigger. So I've gotten better at my strategic planning, and I've got better at aligning the team and what we do with that.
Okay.
But overarching, I think values is probably the key thing, just infusing them into every single thing that I do, and leading there and watching that get picked up by those around me has been very satisfying.
Yeah, nice. You mentioned learning. How do you learn, and perhaps what roles clinic mastery played in that? But what does learning mean to you?
It's interesting you say that. One of my team put it back to me very recently. We work on a 70-20-10 learning model. 70% is experience doing it, 20% peer, helping each other out, and 10% formal. And what the team member said to me was, what I love about working here is you let us make mistakes.
Right.
And I thought that was really powerful, that, we do stuff things up from time to time, but it's the stuff up's actually not the issue. It's are we coachable? What are we learning? Making the same mistakes every week is a problem, but making them once or twice, that's part of all our journeys.
Right.
I've got a 1-year-old at the moment. I'm watching him try to learn to walk. There's so many steps and so many mistakes in there. It's no different as we get older. And I think the role Clinic Mastery's played for me there, I've been with Clinic Mastery over 2 years now. The role there is about moving to a higher plane. And when I first got into it, I thought, great, I could probably sign up to this for a few months. I could get all the bits I need.
I think you said those words to me in Brisbane. In fact, I recall it.
Yeah. That I thought it was kind of like a gym where you just go in, use the bits you need, and off you go. And what I've learned through this journey myself is the implementation is actually the most difficult piece. All the learnings are out there. There's self-help books, there's motivation books, there's coaches outside of Clinic Mastery, inside Clinic Mastery. You can find any of these things anywhere you want, but it's you getting the rubber to hit the road that is the tough bit of doing it. And when I started my journey with Clinic Mastery, I was in the weeds, and I'm dealing with, it might be a client issue or a team member issue. And that's not the higher plane that I wanted to be on. So getting a few of those things sorted, understanding the jigsaw of where things fit together, what a good system looks like, how that ties in with values, what a career pathway for a practitioner or client support work looks like. Putting all of those bits together, knowing my numbers and our KPIs, and having that longer term plan, that's really where I've gotten to now, and where a lot of growth and sustainability has come from. A couple of years ago, I did all the finances because I wouldn't know, could I trust someone how to do that? It's systemized now. I've not even paid myself in a year or two. I've got a team member that does that.
Right.
They manage all the finance work. It's amazing and liberating. And having that trust in them to be able to do that, and they do an amazing job. I used to stay up at night on all sorts of things at work, but having that higher purpose around a strategic plan and being able to delegate those tasks out to a leadership team and have reporting structures and whatnot, that means I'm just looking at the results sometimes and being part of the project plan, not always being accountable for delivery.
And if we were to pull out the crystal ball and fast forward a little bit, what do you see for Eat, Speak, Learn? What does the future look like for your clinic?
So we've got some big visions and dreams about a multidisciplinary practice. It's always been part of the original dream, but the delivery is hard because it's reliant on the right people.
Sure.
People are hard to get. So our big vision is, how do we turn Eat Speak Learn from a little family owned business into something that our team members can own, into something that others can come into something that can be a practice for everyone. I think when we commence these journeys and businesses, we're quite protective of the effort we've put in. We know how much has gone into those things, and I feel that we're in a really good space now to start looking to that next journey of, how do we make Eat Speak Learn sustainable beyond Lauren and myself?
Mm. Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah, we've got some ideas, and we'll keep
Yeah.
rolling them out. We've been doing a lot of work of partnerships around our community in the ACT, because we know there's a lot of clinic owners in the ACT across multiple disciplines, all in those same spots that we've been in or are in, and part of those journeys. And we're really looking to the future of, how do we do this better rather than all doing a lot of work
Hmm.
when we're achieving the same result.
I love it, mate. I think if we land the plane, thinking about your journey over the last 5 or 10 years from transitioning out of the public service to a small mum and dad clinic in the spare room to now a team of dozens, and those big dreams, I love that, and I love the fact that you've been able to wrestle with having a clinical spouse and non-clinical yourself. If you were to talk to a couple of different clinic owners, what would you say firstly to the solo hero, or the guys that are starting out and are really hustling and grinding in those early days? Any pearls of wisdom for that gang?
I think investing in your future, both time and learning, is key. I think so often we're just trying to get the cash flow right and look after ourselves, but
Hmm.
finding like a mentor group like Clinic Mastery, building those strategic plans, understanding those numbers, that takes a whole level of investment that sometimes we don't always recognize, and it's life-saving. And for a married couple, I've talked to a lot of married couples in business, and having some rules around that set up at the start is really important.
Like
That's
what?
things we didn't have. Our
So
dinner
what are some
table
rules? What are some rules you've got now?
threshold rules, such as, when I come in the door, I want to get changed out of my work clothes. Go to the bathroom, and then I can be a family man.
Nice.
Not using the dinner table as a boardroom table.
Well played.
Access to Slack and things like that. When are we doing those things? And look, I won't say we're great at them. We try really hard, but yeah, knowing which hat you're wearing. Are you a dad or are you a director?
Wow. Or a husband, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, and so if you were to then talk to, say, the clinic owner who's built quite a significant clinic, who's done it themselves, and thinking where to next, maybe they've hit that. You know what it's like. There's a threshold, or there's multiple thresholds in clinic owner journey. If there's a clinic owner who's reached a level of success or a version of success, and they've hit the threshold, what do you say to them?
I say, think visionary about what's next. You know, um, is it staying on that solo journey? Is it working with others better? You're coming from a place of real security and stability. I would hope that you can open up a whole different vision. For us, that's been around, investment in technology, and COVID was actually a really, in a strange way, a good time for us, because we're a paperless office, we're a cloud-based office. We're able to expand services during that period by,
Mm-hmm.
offering telehealth from Queensland and Adelaide and Tasmania and all sorts of places. So, um, investing back in with that next vision of what's next. Yeah, for us, that's we could do speech pathology for the rest of our lives and we'd be comfortable. But we know actually what our clients want is one-stop shops and multidisciplinary services, and that's currently not available in the ACT in private practice. So we're committed to building that, because we know we will do an amazing job for our clients, and ultimately that's what our reputation is based on.
I love it. And finally, if there's a clinic owner out there listening, and typically in the broad sense, clinic owners are practitioners. Can you maybe speak to those clinic owners who have a non-clinical partner and they'd love to get into business together, and those married couples that want to work closer? What sort of encouragement or advice would you have to people considering being non-clinical and involved in a health practice?
I think if you've got a good partnership with your partner, you can make it work. Lauren and myself are a team. We have been for almost 20 years. This isn't even the first time we've worked together, but we're on the same page, and that really makes life work. We've done desire statements together, those life plans. We're aligned when we're talking to our team. Those sorts of things are really important. And if that's going to be difficult as a married couple doing that, then I think stick to two separate jobs.
Yeah.
The marriage should come first. And also, who wears the pants in that? So we have really distinct roles. I run the practice and Lauren runs the clinical. We can't both do both.
Uh-huh. Love it. It's really good advice, really practical, but I think I think it's boots on the ground. It's what people want to know. So, man, that's super helpful. Hey, if people want to have a look at your clinic, maybe get in touch with you, is there a URL or a LinkedIn or something like that? How can people check out more?
Yeah, absolutely love having people come and check out our website. We love people coming into the clinic. They're more than welcome. www.eatspeaklearn.com.au. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on LinkedIn. They can also send me an email at chris@eatspeaklearn.com.au. We're more than happy to share our experiences and knowledge with the wider community.
Mate, you're a legend. Folks, we'll make sure we link all that up in the show notes over at clinicmastery.com/podcast. All of the social links and all of those sorts of things. Hey, Chris McDonald, Eat, Speak, Learn. It has been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you so much for joining us on the Grow Your Clinic podcast.
Thanks, Jack.
And folks, thank you for joining us, for listening in. I hope that's been useful, insightful. There's plenty of gold in there. So if you need to rewind, slow it down, or grab the show notes over at clinicmastery.com/podcast, make sure you do that. Make sure you put action to what you've heard and learnt today. But again, thank you for tuning in to today's episode. And I can't wait to bring you another episode of the Grow Your Clinic podcast again really soon. Bye for now.